ጧቲ ጎድጓዳ ነው አይታየን ጭሱ በረጅም አውቶቡስ ከዚያው ካልደረሰው አቤት ከፈለ
And victory of Black communities of Pan-Africanism, which is a beacon of solidarity in our ongoing struggle for dignity, equality, and rights. As we go through this evening, our discussion will illuminate an impact of Adwa's historical legacies, external influences, the vibrant internal dynamics that shape the experience of Black communities. In facing these complexities, we're not disheartened, instead we're inspired to offer practical strategies aimed at nurturing and strengthening Black solidarity. To guide us through this enlightening exploration, we're honored to have three distinguished guests today with us, who are going to be speaking and introducing soon, each are beacon of knowledge, activism, and inspiration in their own communities. Their insight will challenge us, educate us, and most of all, unite us. And what celebration without music? So we're going to have music and we're going to have food after. But before we proceed further, let's take a moment to acknowledge the land that we're here today. So we're going to have our land acknowledgement after. So we acknowledge the land that we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Sagas, the Kreduk, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wenda peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuits, and Métis. We acknowledge that Toronto is the discovery of the Treaty 13 of the Mississauga of the Credit. We also recognize the contribution of Métis, Inuit, and other Indigenous peoples, those in shaping and strengthening this community, our province, and our country as a whole. We're grateful for the Black community that we have here in Greater Toronto area. This community is now celebrating Black excellence due to many decolonization acts that we put in place over the years. The space that we fought over the years, the change that we made over the years. We cannot forget the Indigenous struggles still exists. And we should advocate for the strengthening of their communities just as much as we advocate for ours. Now, without further ado, I'm going to be inviting Dr. Galila, which is our member of CMSS. She's going to say a few things about CMSS and the works that we do in the community. Please help me in welcoming Dr. Galila.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you for all you beautiful people for coming to this event. This event is titled The Battle of Adwa and Pan-Africanism in celebration of Black History Month. And we're very grateful for Blue Nile Restaurant for giving us the space to host this event. We have a fantastic lineup of fabulous speakers, Dr. Pedro Sodu, sociologist and researcher, and Dr. Heather Hines, an expert in higher education profession, and Francis Jeffa, who's a curator and founder of Canadian Multicultural Museum. This year, as you all know, marks the 128th anniversary of the defeat of the Italian invading force. They were beaten by Ethiopian forces near the town of Adwa. The year was 1896. The defeat of an ambitious colonial power by an African nation was a huge psychological breakthrough for colonized African nations. The victory at Adwa heralded the beginning of resistance against colonial powers, paving the way for Pan-Africanism and Black liberation movements in general. I'm going to slightly shift gears here because our next speaker will be speaking about Adwa. And I would like to speak with you about a new organization, Center for Multiculturalism and Settlement Services, CMSS, of which I am a member. The goal of this organization is to help our African Canadian brothers and sisters to integrate better into society. There are many newcomers, for example, to help them and those who have been living here for a long time as well, to network, to share experiences, to share our expertise and knowledge, essentially, to open doors for each other. This is the brainchild of a friend of mine, Dr. Fisaha Balai. We call him Fish for short. We call him Fish because he's a fantastic swimmer. I don't know, where is he? You know him, I hope. Oh, there he is, down there. And there, besides myself, there are 4 other members of this organization: Bethlehem Birara, RMC here, and Muru Galetu, and Haptabu Kasa, as well as Henok Wadasalasi. So some of the programs which we have run thus far, last August, I wasn't present at that particular event, I was away, but there was a workshop organized where we had mentors from different fields of areas of study and professions. We had from the medical field, engineers, social workers, and guiding those who want to enter those particular fields, what are the system, what are the routes one would have to undertake to either to study or how to apply for these kinds of jobs. And 3 weeks ago, we had a fantastic workshop for those interested in information technology. It was a networking event. We had many speakers and many of them are here today as well. They spoke about, what their studies were like and how they got into the profession, how they funded their education, the different setbacks they had, and how they overcame those difficulties. We also had someone from the other side who actually does hire folks that specialize in information technology, and it was just such an eye-opening experience for me to see, how the person who hires you, what they're looking for. And it was a fantastic event, and we're just so grateful that they were able to participate in the program. Soon we're gonna have a financial literacy workshops, how to save, how to budget, to learn how the tax system works, how when you obtain credit cards, that little poisonous interest rate you have to pay on it, how it's calculated. It's very easy to get into debt, thinking you just have to obviously just do a minimum payment, right? So let me go, and the other main thing we'll be doing with CMSS, one of the large service we will be providing is tutorial services for kids from the African Canadian members of our community. Often, and some of you, if you had kids who went through the school system, there's a lot, parents have to help and provide a lot of help for the children to succeed in schools. Even those of us who have been either educated here and have the educational skills, parental input is just so extremely important. And often, large members of our community either are working on, 2-3 jobs, hand-to-mouth existence. That's the kind of life they have, or they don't have the educational background or knowledge. They don't understand the system, the educational system, how it works. So you can almost, if you have to calculate the risk of failure for those kids, you could see it is quite high. So we want to be able to catch the children before they get to high school. We would have a tutorial service where we would read to them, get them to become good readers, help them with their reading and writing skills, and their mathematical skills, the sort of thing. We want them to meet the expectation and go beyond it for their level in the elementary school. So we would be helping such children from grade 3 to grade 8. So that's the grade we're looking for. And we'll also have, hopefully when we get more computers to help those who want to gain some computer skills, we will have, in the center and this the space that we have rented, we'll be providing those kinds of knowledge sharing tutorial services as well. To run our services, we have obviously none of this comes for free. So we have various expenses. A large, the central cost, of course, is the rental space. We want, many people, most of whom are here today. They've been helping us in painting the place and scraping and sanding it and cleaning it, because we want to have a really nice, beautiful place for, when the children come, that they feel at home. It's a nice environment. And it's just, when you study, when you read, in a nice place, it's just psychologically a really good feeling. So we want to make it really nice for them. And we're just really grateful for all of those people, knowing what our program will be about, that thus far have been helping us to meet the cost for their rent and for various expenses. They did not hesitate to spend their time, in making the space beautiful. And we're just, I don't want to name names because there are just too many of them, and I don't want to leave out anyone behind. One of the things that made me really happy was that everybody was just so willing to help us when they heard about this program. And in a way, it reminds me of Menelik's wife, the Empress Aitu, when it was inevitable that the Italians were going to invade. There was obviously panic, and the emperor sought her advice. He valued her judgment. She was actually quite a bright woman, and he also trusted her instincts. He's a sensible man. That's a message for the men in this audience. And she didn't wobble, she just said, we have no choice. We will have to go. The alternative is really not an alternative to be colonized and essentially be enslaved. So the other thing I would like to say, personally for me, to have been, involved in this program and to be willing to participate in it is because, when I think back of my own personal life, all of us, when we think about our educational successes or professional achievements that we had, there are always people behind us that really helped us, right? We had, it could be your neighbors, the parents putting a roof over your head, feeding you, cooking for you, encouraging you when you think you can't do it. There's someone there saying, yes, you can do it, and helping you if you don't understand, to help with your homework. We always had it, and there's so many people that they just kind of fade away. But really, there was, a huge army of people that helped us to be where we are. The size of that army would make the likes of, what's his name, Berhan Adwa very jealous. So this is, our new Adwa, the contemporary Adwa. This is the battle for the betterment of our communities and the battle to equip our kids with the, foundational and fundamental skills and knowledge that they need to succeed. And, we can't shy away from our responsibilities at this point. We need to participate, and we very much need your help, to support CMSS. And as Menelik said, if I recall correctly, Wasita Kakara, ከጦርነቱ ስመለስ አልምርህም ብሎ ነበረ. He said, I will not forgive you when I come back if we do not participate, in the call for the Battle of Adwa. So, ፍስሐ አይምራችሁም. Help us out, all right? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Galila, for setting the stage beautifully. Thank you so much once again. Before we delve into the different programs, next up we do have Dr. Teodros, that's our next speaker. I'm going to say a few things before calling up on the stage. So Dr. Teodros is a distinguished sociologist and researcher. He's holding PhD from York University with prior academic achievements from the University of Windsor. His groundbreaking research has significantly advanced our understanding in mixed ethnicity in Ethiopia, providing critical examination of the biases embedded in the 1995 Constitution. Through his scholarships, Dr. Zaudu offers a profound insight into an ethnic relationship striving towards enhancing social relations. But his work extends beyond the study of mixed ethnicity. Dr. Zaudu delves into crucial issues such as food security, constitutional discourse, contributing valuably to the discussion of social justice and the right to food. By analyzing Ethiopian legal and economic fireworks, he brings to light the imperative of aligning policy with the principle of equity and accessibility. Dr. Daudu's dedication to social justice shines through his mentorship of young immigrants and advocacy for marginalized communities. He stands as a beacon of hope, embodying belief in transformative power of education and activism. As a prolific speaker and media analyst, his voice has become influential in shaping public discourse of a variety of social and economic and political issues, particularly in East Africa. Dr. Zaudu is a testament to the critical role academic research plays in addressing real-world challenges. So tonight, Dr. Zaudu will be presenting the Chronicles of Adwa, a comprehensive overview of the historical context. This presentation promises to take us to the journey through the moments of Battle of Adwa, shedding light on its significance not just through the moments of Battle of Adwa, shedding light on its significance not just for Ethiopia but for the entire African continent and the diaspora. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Teodros to the stage as a challenge to share his valuable insights. Thank you.
And so I am speaking the spirit of Adwa, that the horizontal affiliation. My research is about the horizontal affiliation. So I want you all now take your mind back to 1889. And then that's the background information, very important about the strength of horizontal affiliation. Prior to that, we had this, the number of years conflict, but the horizontal affiliation was strong. And then the Kifukan, the evil days, the famine, that took place from 1888 up until 1892. 4 years after that was the Battle of Adwa. As Richard Pancras put it, 90% of the castles perished. Mind you. So 4 years prior to the Battle of Adwa, we had no cattle. And then 1/3 of the population perished. And then on top of that, our emperor also died at the Battle of Metema. Now you have this skills, organizational skills, collecting and gathering people. The two important aspects are overlooked, always overlooked. They say, why Menelik stopped at Adwa? Why didn't he go, further? And my people on my mom's side ask. My mom's Eritrea. So my dad is from Gondar, my mom from Eritrea. So they usually, on my mom's side, they usually ask, why did he stop at the Adwa? Why didn't, come to liberate us? But the thing is, this important historical fact is always overlooked. Some foolishly, others consciously. They overlooked it. And, 1/3 of the population is gone, 90% of the cattle are gone. And then how are you going to fight all the way to Masawa? It's impossible. Impossible. And then, so now we have had this for the past 100 and something years, continue to be the case, the headache for the motherland Ethiopia. And then just in February, the Italian Prime Minister, populist, right-wing minister, the party of Mussolini basically, and gathered Africans in Rome. And then the social media was talking about how Isaias and Abiy are walking in Rome. And we don't want people to walk in Rome. We want people to walk in each other's capital city, not in Rome. So I'm speaking now this, what I call coronization, the politics of coronization. You guys, you all remember Corona. So the number one thing was social distancing. So Africans after the scramble of Africa, after this 1884, 1885 thing, what we have in place is masking other colonization is coronization, distancing yourself from your neighbor. So politically distancing yourself, socially distancing yourself, economically distancing yourself. That's why African leaders, they have to go to Europe. Coup d'etat, in terms of coup d'etat, compared to the world, of 492 attempted or successful coups carried out around the world since 1950, Africa has seen 220 of them. Since 2020, during the corona, seven coups took place in Africa. Niger, Burkina Faso, Sudan, Guinea, all those places. And now I want to read a poem that was composed by Nkrumah in 1963. He's calling it Ethiopia Shall Rise. So just Ethiopia, think about Africa shall rise. Although Nkrumah wants to have immediate unification of African people, as the representative of the Casablanca group. And the Moravian side, they want slow integration, slow economic integration. That was their position. Now we have no orientation back. I don't know what orientation they have. They have colonization now. So his poem, 1963, delivered in Addis, Ethiopia, Africa's bright June, set high among the Berhan hills that gave birth to the unfolding waters of the Nile. Ethiopia shall rise. Ethiopia, land of the wise. Ethiopia, bold and cradle of Africa's ancient rule and fertile school of our African culture. Ethiopia, the wise shall rise and remold with us the full figure of Africa's hope, self-reliance, self-respect, and solidarity, and destiny. Nkrumah, mind you, although he was against the OAU whatever thing, but he was able to write this. Although Imperial Selassie's position was with the Moravian, So we need that kind of leader, transcending the division, and then able to compose this beautiful poem. And thank you again. Thank you for your time. And now.
To different through different ways actually. So the first one, I would like to thank Technically Sally. I'm not sure if he's here today, is he? No, he's not. So we'd like to thank him for sponsoring this. Second is Adwa. She's a real estate in the area, so please make sure to support them as well. Dr. Daniel Kabeda. He is a family physician within the community. Anna Printing, thank you so much again. You've been helping us through most of our flyers, a lot. So thank you so much again. And Taibu Community Health Center and Dr. Book Abdesalasi, thank you so much once again. Sure it's going to be displayed in a minute. Advocate for student support and experiential education, who has applied her expertise into the post-secondary sector for the past 20 years. A Quebec native, Heather earned a BA in History from the University of Ottawa before moving to McGill, where she received a second undergraduate degree in education as well as an MA in educational administration. She joined the University of Toronto in 2004. Has had several leadership roles since most recently as a director of undergraduate programs and student services for the Department of Management. In 2006, she helped found Connection and Conversations, the Tri-Campus Affinity Group and racialized staff. She contributes to work as a mentor of University of Toronto leadership program to coordinate UTM's anti-Black Racism Action Group and a volunteer activity in the community, including within an Optimist Club of Oakville and abroad of the Lawrence Scholars Foundation. As a Director of Office, Heather is the Vice President and Principal First Point of Contact, leading the office day-to-day operation and managing the development and Vice President scheduled events and executive level meetings. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Heather Hines as she takes the stage to share her valuable insight. Thank you so much.
All right, so I'm going to start off and just say thanks so much for inviting me to be here today. I'm really honored for the opportunity to address this group, especially during Black History Month. The work that the Center for Multiculturalism does is so important, empowering marginalized communities to thrive in their personal and professional lives. I particularly like the word thrive, not manage, not get by, not survive, but thrive. That is an important distinction, and it resonates with me because it is something I've personally and professionally fought for myself and for our wider Black community. Our history is filled with examples of people trying to dim our light, and less minutes or so with you sharing my thoughts on Black female empowerment in the 21st century through some stories and other details that will hopefully give you some food for thought. And I also just want to say to the men in the crowd today, although my focus is on women, that includes you, because you are our husbands, you are our brothers, you are our fathers, our grandfathers, you're our cousins. You're an equal part in this. We need you in this as well. You're a part of the equation. So please, whatever I'm saying, know that it applies to you as well. All right. This is me. I was born in Quebec, and I grew up on the south shore of Montreal in a town called St. Bruno. I would say that at the time, the population was probably a 40-60 split between Anglophones and Francophones. My parents both emigrated from Canada to Jamaica, to Canada from Jamaica, but separately. It wasn't until they were both teaching in the same school in St. Bruno that they met, fell in love, and got married. Both had been trained as teachers back home and came to Canada for increased opportunities. That is a story that many of you might be familiar with, leaving everything that you know behind and venturing to a new and unknown country. It takes incredible bravery and determination to reach your goals. I'm grateful my parents made the trek, but I'm also painfully aware that it was not an easy one for them. And they were faced with all sorts of trials and challenges that I only really understood when I was much older. They instilled in me that being average would not cut it, and that excellence should always be my goal. I was a Black girl growing up in a white environment, and that meant there was no other option. I had to work harder, faster, and better, because there would be no shortcuts for me. If I didn't mention it already, St. Bruno was mostly white, 99% white. In our school that went from kindergarten to grade 6, my brother and I were the only black students. Happily, my parents had a strong circle of friends and supporters, mostly from the Caribbean, who'd all come to Canada for school or for work opportunities. So while we were alone in our town, we did have a community, and it was good and it was strong. So how did that come to be, and how did that impact my life? So I'm going to ask you to advance. Thanks. Some would say that perhaps it started with fire. This is Fire Mariah. So this is actually my great-grandmother. This is the only picture that we have of her. Fire Mariah was my father's maternal grandmother and his primary caregiver. The nickname given to her was a result of her fiery temper. She was not one to be played with. My dad came from a family of 14. So as one of the eldest, my father lived with his grandmother to alleviate the pressures on his mother. I never met her, but I learned of her through my dad's stories and the book he later published about her. He knew little of her upbringing, but suspected her life had been touched by slavery in some way when she was very young. She didn't like to talk about those days, so we'll never know. But I sometimes think about it and what it must have been for her as a black woman back then. The obstacles that she had to face on a daily basis, and that still found a way to make a successful life for herself and for her family. She was a wife and partner. She was a commander whose orders were obeyed without question by her grandchildren and the wider community. She was a strategist who found ways to provide her grandchildren with hard-to-get but beloved items like a simple paint kit that she once gifted my father with. She was a benefactor of the church, and her Bible was her favorite and most often read book. She was a future builder. She was the role model my father and his siblings remembered as they grew older, as they each emigrated to Canada, and through the support of the sibling just a little bit older than them, came to the country. They learned about sacrifice and the satisfaction of helping their family succeed in a new country. So now let's take a look at someone I know we spent some time learning about today. All right. First off, I want to thank my friend Lulu for the beautiful book she gifted me about the history of Ethiopia. I have to say, one of the reasons I love working in universities is because I get to learn new things all the time. And so Lulu's book on Ethiopia and the opportunity to come here today afforded me the chance to learn a lot about Ethiopia. So thank you for that, Lulu. It was a history I wasn't familiar with, but it's fascinating, and I want to learn more. So thank you for all the stuff I've been able to hear today. Anyway, I quickly learned through the book and some other research that Empress Taitu was a force to be reckoned with. I learned she had a comprehensive education, which was rare for the women at that time. I also learned that she was very much equal with her husband, the emperor, and they made decisions jointly. So as I heard earlier, he valued her, her judgment. He valued what she said. Rather than agree to an unjust Italian treaty that would have placed Ethiopia in a subservient position, they said no. As an aside, I found it interesting that the would-be colonialists tried the same treaty language manipulation that they used on Indigenous peoples here in Canada. As an aside, if you've never seen it, I would recommend you watch a documentary called Trick or Treaty that was done by the National Film Board on YouTube. So getting back to the Empress, she was impressive. I would have liked to have known her, I think. And she was one of the primary reasons why Ethiopia was able to beat back the Italians and avoid colonization. She was a woman well ahead of her time. She was a wife and partner, working with her husband side by side. She was a commander, literally a commander, who led her own battalion at the Battle of Adwa. She was a strategist who analyzed troop movements and intelligence while also managing political relationships to benefit the country. She was a benefactor of the church, and she was a devout supporter of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. She too was a future builder. And I know I've only touched on very few of her accomplishments, but through her efforts, Ethiopia became the envy of many other nations in Africa and beyond. So two women, two completely different times, different circumstances, different scale, one with family as her primary concern, the other with a nation as hers. Different, but somehow similar. and still familiar. Familiar to us now as we think about their stories. Black women have always had to bring their most excellent selves to each and every task. The consequences of failure were and are simply too great, so we find a way forward. What can we learn from Fire Mariah and Empress Taitu? How can we find a way forward in this country that wasn't designed with us in mind? It's okay, we're going to stay on up again. So first and foremost, never forget, never regret. And that's why, I'm so pleased to be here today, because you're taking the time to remember a milestone moment in your country's history, in all of our history, right? Never forget, never regret. Don't forget where you come from. Don't forget your past. It's what makes us who we are. It's in your DNA. Don't allow anyone to make you feel anything less than proud about where you're from, who you are, and because people that came before us didn't work as hard as they did for us to have doubt. Doubt's not an option. Doubt disrespects the work that they put in. As Black women, we are sometimes our harshest critics. Can we do it? Do we deserve it? Of course we do. And we make contributions that far outpace our peers every day. So, how can we help to ensure success in a Canadian context? First, we need to understand this place we're living in. So I want to give a little bit of context, and I know many of you will know about this, but multiculturalism in Canada's multicultural policy back in 1971 was brought in under Pierre Trudeau and later codified through the Canadian Multiculturalism Act. The idea behind multiculturalism was to build a society where everyone was welcome and had an equal opportunity to obtain employment and participate fully in Canadian life and thrive. Sounds good, right? It was even taken further through the Employment Equity Act, which designated 4 protected groups, right? And I've got them listed here. So we had women, Indigenous peoples, persons with disabilities, and visible minorities. The challenge with this setup was that by virtue of lumping all racialized people together, it rendered the fate of Black people pretty much invisible. Organizations could report great improvements in their employment equities numbers, while actually never improving the lot of the Black employees in their midst. The term visible minority actually damaged us in some ways. It brought with it a color blindness that was counterproductive to what it thought it would do. Other racialized groups might have been doing well, but it wasn't the same for the Black community. So I have a question for you. How do you count something you can't see? Right? How do you count something you can't see? You don't. And that has created years of challenges for us. If you don't have data, you can't make claims. You can't ask for programs. You can't get grants. You can't make progress. So do you know who employment equity has actually helped? Anyone guess?
White women.
Thank you, Jeff. White women. White women were the ones who benefited the most from these policies, but not us. It was only last year that a review of the Employment Equity Act was undertaken specifically to address challenges such as the one I've just shared. So many years later, they have finally acknowledged that the Act has not provided the equity that it was expected to. So what does that mean for us today? Go to the next slide, thanks. So there's a little bit more information, and for those of you in the back, it might be small, and you don't have to see all the details, so don't worry, but I'm just trying to place some of this in a larger context. We talked about the lack of data and not having information, and so now when you do see some of the data that we've been able to collect, so until 2021, close to 1.5 million people in Canada reported being Black. Nearly 620,000 of them were women or girls. I also want to mention that the GTA has the highest percentage of Blacks in the country. If you look at this other stat, in 2020, 89% of 48 of Canada's largest organizations reported that they had zero Black women in the pipeline to fill executive officer roles. Zero. In 2021, Black women workers were mostly employed by the healthcare and social assistance sectors, right? So again, lower paying sort of roles. And there's just a little bit more detail just around, breakdowns. 32.6% of the Black population originated from Africa, 2.8% for Ethiopia. while 21% were born in the Caribbean and Bermuda. So over 300 ethnic or cultural origins were reported by the Black population in Canada. So what does this mean? It means that there are a lot of us. But if you look at this data, we're not where we should be. We're not where we could be. So we have some catching up to do. All right. So one of the things that we see a lot is we welcome diverse applicants. We welcome, you see you're laughing because you know, right? We welcome diverse applicants, right? We're a welcoming nation. But the reality is, to be welcome isn't enough. So I have a quote that I want to read for you because it resonated with me when I read it. So it's by a scholar named Sarah Ahmed. She says, conditional hospitality is when you are welcomed on condition that you give something back in return. The multicultural nation functions this way. The nation offers hospitality and even love to would-be citizens as long as they return this hospitality by integrating or by identifying with the nation. People of color in white organizations are treated as guests, temporary residents in someone else's home. People of color are welcomed on condition they return that hospitality by integrating into a common organizational culture or by being diverse and allowing institutions to celebrate their diversity. So I don't know about you, I don't want to be welcome. I want my own home. I want to build everything in it, and I want to be the one who makes all the decisions about it. So, how do we stay true to ourselves while navigating these institutions, often ones with colonialism entrenched at all levels of the organization? So one of the things, if you can advance to the next slide, thanks. One of the things I want to talk about is just sharing a few lessons and a few stories I want to share with you. So the first one is around your well-being. So your well-being matters. And I know, people are like, and not, want to take this one seriously. But to me, your well-being is a foundational piece. If you don't have your health, you don't have anything. Right? Imagine when you get a simple cold and you lie in bed and you think, I didn't appreciate when I felt well, right? We have to think about how do we take care of ourselves, right? How many of you regularly take time for yourselves? I'm asking the women in the room, right? We're always busy doing for others, getting the kids out the door, checking on them, checking homework, doing this, doing that. How often do we take time for just a moment for ourselves, to take a deep breath, to take a walk around the block, just to stop? How often do we allow ourselves to stop? I'm guilty of this too, because I know there's so much riding on me moving forward. But if I don't take those times to stop, then what's the point? So just to share a little data with you, 42% of Black Canadians aged 18 years and older reported their health to be fair or poor, compared to 11% of white Canadians. The prevalence of fair or poor health for Black women reached 15%. 64% of young Black women aged 12 to 17 reported their mental health to be excellent or very good. This is significantly lower than the 77% of young white women who reported excellent or very good mental health. The prevalence of diabetes among Black Canadian adults was 2.1 times the rate of white Canadians. 40.8% of Black Canadians aged 18 years and older reported being active or moderately active, compared to 54.2% of white Canadians. And of course, we all remember how COVID disproportionately impacted Black communities. Right? We have to take care of ourselves. Build it into your daily practice. Take the time, even for 5 minutes. Take some deep breathing, take the walk, stop. A strong body and clear mind are foundational pieces of our being. So this next one is, it's a 2-for-1. So respect is your reality, and allies make your battles their battles. So I'm going to tell you a little story for this one. It takes me to my earlier days of working at the university. Having worked at 4 universities in my career, I can confidently say that they're wonderful places. I've mentioned earlier, I love learning. I love being in places where learning is happening. Young people are learning. I get to learn just by virtue of being in that space. I get to work with smart people. I love it. I've made it my professional home. But that being said, it can sometimes be a mass of contradictions. Although they're places of learning, curiosity, exploration, and places where debate are encouraged. They can also be places where you encounter ignorance, closed-off thinking, and cultivation of a status quo that benefits some and disadvantages others. I've experienced microaggressions, heard educated, in air quotes, people engage in talk that was racist. Those are the situations that are easy to name, but this encounter at the time left me unsure of what had happened and how to process it. So just have to imagine, this is 2009, Heather, so this is quite a while ago. I was in a meeting that consisted of several external stakeholders who'd come to campus. All was going well, but the meeting was running longer than had been expected. And the people that had come in, they were worried about their car and the parking meter and what was going to happen because they hadn't put enough money in it. At expressing their concern, one of my colleagues turned to me and said, "Heather, can you go and feed the meter for their car?" Jeez. I was completely taken aback. Why was I, of all the people in the room, being asked to leave? Did I do something wrong? Was I not contributing to the conversation? Why me? All of the above flashed in my head, and not wanting to, make a scene in front of our external partners, I left. I had to go to my office, find money, find my coat, because it was winter, of course, and feed that darn meter. I probably missed around 20 minutes of that meeting by the time I got through all of that. I should also note that the person who asked me to go and feed the meter had a full suite of his office, people that reported directly to him. They were a stone's throw away. He could have excused himself and had them do it, but no, he had me do it, or asked me to do it. The person that was actively engaged in the meeting, dressed to impress, I had my business attire on, I prepared for the meeting. I probably was the best prepared person in that meeting. But I was sitting there, I had two undergrads at that point and my master's at that point, and I was the one asked to leave the room. I don't believe the person who sent me out of the room on that errand consciously thought, "Oh, let me send the black woman out to do the errand." That's how unconscious bias works. That's how colonialism works, right? He had clearly addressed the worth of the people in that room, and I was the lowest status option in his eyes, and therefore disposable. By that person's actions, they signaled that I mattered less than anyone else and wouldn't be missed because my contributions were negligible. I silently fumed through the remainder of the meeting, and once it was done, I thought about how I was going to bring it up because I wasn't going to let this one stand. The challenge, though, was how do you bring it up? And that's when the doubt set in. So for the women here, self-doubt, again, sometimes our worst enemy, right? Was I misreading things? Was I making a bigger deal of it than I should? Just be grateful to have a job, that they included me in the first place. All those things start going through my head, right? To my surprise, a senior colleague with whom I attended the meeting showed up at my door soon afterwards. He apologized profusely to me for his colleague's actions. He too had been caught off guard by the events that had transpired, and he was mad. I think he might have been madder than I was, if you can believe it. And he wasn't accepting it. He actually took my colleague, the one who'd sent me out of the room, to task, and that person actually ended up apologizing to me. It's hard feeling that you have to take the world on, especially on your own. Especially when you're unsure if what you experienced or felt was real, right? Gaslighting is a real thing. Like, am I really thinking, did this really happen to me? I deserved respect, but I forgot it in that moment, right? As educated as I was, as prepared as I was, I forgot. And I forgot that I deserved more. Instead, I was filled with self-doubt and paralysis set in. And like I said, 2024 Heather wouldn't have a problem addressing it in the moment. But 2009 Heather, still very early in her career, did. I forgot and I didn't speak up. And that is why it was so validating to hear someone else say, "Yes, that wasn't okay. Are you okay? Let me check in with you. Let me see what I can do to change the situation and to make it better so that never happens again." And literally, that person had erased me from the room. And so it was so good for someone to see, I see you. I see you. You won't always be in a position where you can fight the fight, and that's okay. Sometimes it's enough to reach out to the person and let them know you heard what they heard, what you heard, you saw what you saw, and it wasn't okay, and that you're there for them if there's anything you can do to help. It might seem like a small thing, but it can be huge for the person on the receiving end. I'm a strong advocate for speaking up when you can and getting the respect you deserve. You've worked for it. But I also encourage you to remember those allies in your midst, because sometimes those are the people that are going to help bring you up when you're feeling down and you're feeling like no one else is seeing things that you're seeing. All right, thanks so much. All right, so building and leveraging your community. This one is so important, and I think, the organization here, this is what this is all about. Networks don't happen in vacuums. I encourage you to get involved in your community, and all of you here, from what I can see, are very much engaged and very much involved. But I also want to challenge you a little bit. So I saw there were a lot of familiar faces and people hugging and what have you, but I will say, even in a space where you know a lot of people, have you met anybody new today? Have you reached out to that person? You saw them smile at you, but you didn't say anything more, right? Where you think about, like, why did you come here today? What's your purpose? How can you really make sure that you're living up to that? Maybe you were nervous coming here. I was, I'll be honest. I came from Mulu. Because I love Mulu. And Mulu asked me if I would speak, and I have to say yes, because I respect her so much, and I think she's amazing, right? But of course I was nervous. I've never really come to speak to a group like this before. But here I am, and I've met new people. I've tried some new food. It was great. Thank you. Right? This is all part of building your network. Because I know now, down the road, if I need someone, and I'm like, I met that guy from Taiwan. Let me go talk to him, right? Let me go find him. Oh, someone who doesn't thought about history? Where's the doctor from earlier? Where is he? Is he back there? Right, all right, I know you now. I'm going to find you if I have information, or I need a poem. I need a poem, right? I'm going to come find you, right? This is about building our networks, because this is how we connect with each other. Not ready yet. Just hold on a second. Thank you for helping me. So events like this start us on the path to building our networks, right? It might very well be someone that you meet today who becomes an important part of your life, right? So I encourage you to do more of these kinds of things. Going to events, talking to new people, trying new things. What do you have to lose? One of my best friends came for me hopping on a plane to teach in Japan for 2 years. We would never have met otherwise. Never. She's like a sister to me, an auntie to my girls, and someone whose counsel I respect and value. Even though she lives in England, we help and support each other through all of life's little challenges and surprises. Fire Mariah cultivated networks. Empress Taitu cultivated networks. Why shouldn't you? That takes me to my next slide. Pay it forward. So having a network is only part of the equation. You also have to be an active participant in it. And that means asking, how can you be of service to others? And again, I think I'm in a room filled with people that understand that. Sorry, this is just really, there we go. So, offering your help, not only when people ask, but even when unasked. And I think that's sometimes when it's most important, right? When you just see someone, maybe they're afraid to ask, they're shy to ask, or they don't know that they need to ask for help. That's when you can help and step in and assist people, right? So I'm going to tell a little story now, but I'm going to keep it really short, because the person, the story I'm telling, she's here. So you know this is going to happen, right? All right, so I have to share this because to me, Mulu is a really great example of this. The work that she's doing is so important. Mulu, years ago, of her own volition, created like a STEM day at our campus, University of Toronto, Mississauga, inviting students in for a day where they could see what are the possibilities, what are the things you can do in a lab. And by virtue of the work that she's done, we've actually seen students who then have decided, wow, university is a place for me. STEM is a place for me. And I've come and have studied at UTM, which is so exciting. The work you're doing is so important, right? It's so important. You're laying a foundation for future Black scientists, showing them what is possible. Okay? Right? There's a saying, representation is the visible manifestation of your dreams. How many dreams has she helped inspire by her presence, by her actions? We know of many because they've come to study at our institution. And what an amazing thing. But imagine how far we would get if everyone followed that example, if we all found ways to do this sort of thing and pay it forward. What if you followed that example? And that brings me to part 2 of my pay it forward, which is bring others with you. I'm almost finished. You've been very patient. Thank you. So this is actually an offshoot, like I said, of pay it forward. And I thought it critical enough that it warranted its own speaking points. This is actually a picture of this is a painting that hangs in my house. My father painted it. So remember earlier I told you about my grandmother being creative and finding ways to get that little paint set? That little paint set created a lifelong love of art for my father. And he would paint and paint and paint. So now that he's gone, I still have his paintings. And this one is called Pulling All Together. And I love it. It's one of my favorites. It's quite small, but I love the meaning behind it. Okay. I love it for the collaboration and the community it shows. Right? Could the sole fisher person pull the net out on their own? Probably. But it would take them a long time. It would be very difficult. They'd probably get tangled up in the net. But a group working together for a common cause strengthens the community. Bringing others with you is a common thread that binds us all. So while you're engaging, getting involved, and giving back, whenever you can, encourage others to join you, because we're capable of so much when we are so much stronger when we're working together than when we're on our own. Right? Lulu, I will say, you brought me along. Here I am. All right? And now I'm very interested. I'd love to hear more and see, are there other ways that I can help support your organization and the work that you're doing, because I believe in it. Okay? But women supporting women, women uplifting women, these are all things that we need to remember. So I'm going to do the last slide. I'm wrapping up. So in conclusion, So seize the reins, make the moves, and do the things you need to do to help yourself, and in doing so, add to our collective strength. Before we close, I want you just to think, I was going to make you write it down, but I'm not going to have you do that. I'm just going to challenge you, please. This is the reflection part. I work in an educational institution. What can I say? This is the reflection part. I want you to think about 3 things we're going to take away from this talk today. 3 actions. Right? 3 things that you can do. Maybe it's a promise to yourself that you're going to meet 2 new people here today before you leave. Maybe it's that you're going to put that timer on your phone saying, oh, you know, I'm going to take that mental health break. I'm going to take that pause for myself on a daily basis. Or I'm going to go and try and get a walk around the block. Think about what you can do to start moving towards, a different state of being. So I was going to have you write it down, so I'm just skipping. So exactly, where will you start? Where will you start? There are so many places for you to we all have different skills and talents. Where will you start? Think about that. Okay, I'm going to go last one. Thanks. So thanks for taking the time to listen to me this evening. Hopefully I've left you with some ideas, some strategies, some food for thought that you can use in your own lives to thrive. Like I said earlier, not survive, not just get by, but thrive. I wish you all the best of luck, and thanks again for having me today.
Who you might have known from different of his works. Mr. Francis Jeffers, a proud graduate of University of Toronto at Scarborough. Mr. Jeffers holds a major in chemistry and a minor in political science. But his academic achievements are just the beginning of his incredible journey. Deeply committed to youth development and empowerment, Mr. Jeffers has been a beacon of inspiration and change within the African-Canadian community and beyond. As a founder and executive director of the Canadian Multicultural Inventors Museum, he illuminates the contribution of Canada's diverse communities all to the world of inventions. Furthermore, through the visions of science and network for learning, he has ignited a passion for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM, amongst African-Canadian youth, showcasing the endless possibilities this field holds. His exemplary work earned him the prestigious NSERC Award for Science Promotion 2012, a testament to his reckless efforts in advancing science education among disadvantaged youth. Beyond showcasing invention, Mr. Jeffers has been instrumental in establishing community science clubs across Greater Toronto Area, targeting underrepresented groups since then. His vision led to founding of the BYTES network, providing essential support for Black youths in STEM fields. And through Jeffers Associates, he has contributed significantly to diversity in organizations development. Mr. Jeffers' dedication to community service and educational empowerment is also evident in his involvement within the Black Scientists Task Force on Vaccine Equity, the Association of Black Professionals in Science and Technology, and the African Canadian Heritage Associations. Mr. Jeffers will now share with us about Pan-Africanism, and he has his presentation provided. So, Mr. Jeffers, if you could please come to the stage, and people can help me welcome him. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters.
Good afternoon.
Okay, let's share some love. Good afternoon, brothers and sisters.
Good afternoon.
So my dad was a headmaster of a grammar school in the Caribbean. And when he walked into a room and he said good afternoon or good evening, it was expected to have a very robust response. Otherwise, the alternative was spending time in the headmaster's office. And I don't know in Ethiopia, but in spending time in the headmaster's office in the Caribbean was not something that we wanted to write home about. Right? So it's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to be sharing with you on a special occasion, an occasion which I think everybody of African descent has a lot of pride in. And to actually be on the stage sharing with you some of my thoughts it's a real privilege. I was born in the lovely island of Dominica. Does anybody know where Dominica is? Yes. Yeah, you sure? Not the Dominican Republic. Okay. So the Dominican Republic, they speak Spanish, we speak English and French Creole. One of the things of growing up in a small island is that, especially one that is 99% people of African descent, you feel very empowered. In my class, any of my classes, I felt I could do anything I wanted to do. My friends thought you could do anything you wanted to do. And I didn't know I was black. I just grew up as a young Dominican youth and a Caribbean person. I had dreams of aspirations of going to the University of the West Indies, studying political science and history, and coming back to Dominica and either doing education or going to politics or something. Life sometimes changes. And my mother made the decision to come to Canada. Walking from the airport, decided going to the car park where my stepfather had parked. He came with a big ugly coat. And as a young Caribbean man, I thought, I'm not going to wear this much. This is ridiculous. And look at this guy again. He maybe doesn't like me. Like, loves my mother, maybe he doesn't like me. Till I walked into the parking lot and realized that I'm in a freezer. I quickly ran up to the guy and grabbed that coat from his hand and put it on. You know what I mean? So that was my beginning in Canada. Then I went to school, and the second year I went to school, I went to school grew up in Scarborough. Went to a high school, and where the guidance officer or guidance teacher looked at me and says, how old are you? And I said, I'm 16. And she said, oh, you should go to grade 9. Grade 9. So I said, how many classes, when does high school start here? She said, grade 9. I said, but in Dominica, I was 2 years from graduating high school. And my whole intention of coming to Canada was to go to university. So I said, well, how could I be? I can't go to grade 9. This is just the beginning of high school. She said, well, you're 16. And the education system is different. It made no sense to me, somebody relating my age to my academic abilities. Or where I come from related to my academic abilities. So I thought, I also looked around the school and there wasn't too many black folks there, right? And I said, look, I don't want to go to the school. Right? It doesn't make sense. The next school I went to was Midland Avenue Collegiate, where the guidance, they said, okay, you can go to grade 13, but at the time, in order to get OSAP, in order to go to university, you have to be in Canada at least 1 year. So I thought, I'd never worked in my life because at my age in Dominica, you don't work. So I thought, okay, I'll go into grade 12. And the way I started grade 12, this bit more Canadian experience. It was a good experience. Part of it that wasn't a good experience was the fact that the teachers gave me some tests to know what level of my level of academic abilities. Gave me tests, some of the tests that were very easy for me. And then proceeded then, when I got 100%, proceeded to take marks away based on how I keep up with the answers. Because I had done that work, was experimental physics test, like 3 years ago. So then therefore, in solving the equation, I didn't have 10 lines to show how I solved the equation. I solved the equation in 3 lines. But the fact that the teacher then would take away marks was what I never understood. Because to me, the role of a teacher is to inspire you, build you up, make you feel good. And it was confusing. Then they gave me a biology test where half of the work I hadn't done previously. And I told them that before that. I said, well, that's what I haven't done. But they said, go ahead and do it. But there was a gleam on the face of the teacher that I could only do half of this work. And it was bewildering when I went home and I said to my mother, but I didn't understand. The teachers seemed quite happy that I didn't do well on the test. But also to most of the other folks I spoke to, the black students I spoke to, my age, were all in grade 9 and grade 10. Fast forward, I thought, okay, I won't bother too much with that. But I heard I saw this young woman who was extremely gorgeous. And I thought, Canada is not that bad after all. I didn't think a country like Canada would have that level of beauty. And I was quite very excited to be in Canada. And I spoke to a friend of mine, who Liban knows very well, Akwato Kenti, who was my first friend in Canada, and Akwato said, well, there's a school dance next week and you can get to talk to her. So I was extremely motivated. I think all week, I would go into the washroom and practice my dance steps, right? And till my mother got really tired and said, you did not come to Canada to learn to dance. You came to Canada to go to school and go to university. But anyway, Friday comes. I think I was the first person at the school dance. I was ready. And so then the music is playing. I'm dancing away, doing my best moves. This young woman walks with the door. And you ever seen the slow motion things where it's like you and the woman are running towards each other? Because she's so, you're so excited. This love is in the air. And this young woman walked up to me. And she came up to me and said, Francis, hi. And I said, hi. And she said, I didn't know you could dance. I looked at her. Well, so what do you mean you don't like to dance? She said, well, you wear glasses and you're in science. And she just dissipated. I thought, incredible beauty, but incredible stupidity. And I went home. My mother told me how was the dance. I asked how was the dance. I said, I really don't care. I was no longer excited. But Monday morning when I went to my class, I realized I was the only black male doing any science courses. No, I had never looked at color before. Never looked at color and any relation to education or academic success. But then I also realized that this young lady was not stupid. It's just that the environment that she grew up with was very different from mine. I came from a very empowered background. I came from a family of educators. My dad was a headmaster. Like I said, lots of friends in education. But her situation is very different from mine. She had never met any person of African descent who was in science. Most of the guys in my classes were very athletic. Right? No, I played soccer. I love soccer. I played soccer for my school. And I figured if I can walk and I can chew gum, I can play soccer and still do science. Right? But that was not her experience. So that was my first experience in dealing with issues of the perception of people of African descent in a particular school in Scarborough or in Canada, in terms of what the limited opportunities that the perceptions of people, and also the internalized oppression of young people of African descent in terms of their history and their knowledge. Right? So that started my whole journey of working with young people in terms of representation and STEM. Seeing themselves in the science, seeing themselves at the center of the learning. To that point though, I'll ask a question. In the next 15 seconds, can we name 10 Ethiopian inventors? Can we name 10 Ethiopian inventors in the next 10 seconds, 50 seconds? Okay, that's one. Two.
First item.
Inventors. 15 seconds gone.
Professor Gabisa Jeda.
So 4. Do you really believe that there's only 4 inventors of Ethiopian descent? So how do we change this? Is it important to know Ethiopian inventors? Is it important for your children to know Ethiopian? Is it important for my children to know Ethiopian inventors? So there we have an issue. One of the things of people of African descent is that we do not know our contribution to the world of innovation. So when I'll talk about Black solidarity, I look at it, kind of narrow it down to the area of STEM. Because one of the things that is truly important is that in Canada, less than 5% of Canadians go into STEM careers. It means that's problematic. It means that there's low representation. It also means that we're not sitting at the table of the decision making. So that when decisions are being made in terms of science policy, issues of, for example, reproductive systems, or anything that involves health, sometimes we're not at the table. We don't have enough of us sitting at the table. So that's a major issue for us. And it means since we come from the cradle of civilization, since we're descendants of African people, since we're descendants of the first people, it means it's not good enough that we do not know our history. Because of people, if you think of the concept of Sankofa, if you cannot look behind and get inspiration, see the past, understand the past, how do you then move forward? And so it means in terms of building strong African Canadian societies, it means that we have to do more, we have to do better in terms of information that we have about our people. How we strengthen and get our young ones prepared for the battle that they're going to have to deal with as they go through the school system. The school system has not been friendly. The school system has major issues for us. And I go to schools almost every day. And I see young people of African descent not knowing who they are. The history of African people is strong and solid, but for various reasons we don't know who we are. It could be either based on religion, it could be based on the fact that after 1835, if the roadmap of Africa, the borders of Africa, and within Africa, got completely turned upside down. It led to situations where people were split into unnatural boundaries, having to learn about other people, that from going from nation states to having been stateless, from not having the kind of opportunities in terms of their strength and knowing about their history. And then when you come to that period of the African Holocaust, or what they call slavery, to present day, and you get into diasporic people, we have the bulk of diasporic people who don't even know that they are of African descent, or do not acknowledge that. So imagine coming from an island that is maybe 290 square miles, and growing up in an island that changed hands 40 times between the English and the French, and being told that you're a Negro or you're colored. What does that mean for a young person growing up? So even though I was imported from a social setting, but in terms of my mindset of who I am, that was not very developed. I was quite fortunate at the age of 10 and a half to read the autobiography of Malcolm X, which changed my perspective from understanding that I'm not just a Dominican with no history, because people of African descent are not the indigenous people of the Caribbean. So I just had by circumstance that I happened to have born in Dominica, or my dad happened to have born in Trinidad, or my grandfather happened to be born in Montserrat. The reality was that. And then stop with a name like Francis Jeffers. Do I look like a Francis Jeffers? Does that make any sense whatsoever? There's no logic to that. There's no strength, there's no pride for me having named Francis Jeffers. Other than the fact there's a guy named Francis Jeffers who's a good soccer player, and I love soccer. So yeah, but that's the reality. So therefore, reading a book that tells you who you are, that links you to a landmass, was extremely powerful, and a powerful change in terms of who I am. And that time, it was the time of Black power within the Caribbean, where people right to the Caribbean were concerned about independence, statehood. We were concerned about the apartheid system in South Africa, the liberation struggles in Mozambique, Angola, and for the various colonial powers. It was an amazing time of growth and understanding who you are, what is your place in the world. So the issue of solidarity that Brother Malcolm put forward was extremely important to us. So coming to Canada and meeting brothers and sisters who did not know anything about who they are, and there's a direct correlation towards identity and academic success in some situations. Because you're starting from a deficit. And the question is, then how do we get young African Canadians, regardless of their background, to be empowered and to be able to handle the struggles that they're going to go through? Not to become scientists or inventors or whatever, just for the sake of that career option, but having a social conscience linked to that. What kind of scientists do we want? What kind of people do we want to represent us in the areas at the various decision-making points? Who gets to university? Whether they come from a middle-class background or they come from a working class background. What does that mean? How does that prepare them for success? It means then, therefore, communities have to be empowered to be able to create programming that is run and conducted by them with black leadership, so that therefore they can see themselves and in the magnificence of how they should be. Because at the end of the day, we need to be able to get every young Canadian, especially of African descent, to know that they can reach any level of success that they put their mind to. It comes with hard work. And also means so that young African Canadians have to be able to identify themselves within this multicultural society clearly as a Canadian. One of the sad things for me is when I meet kids who are born in Canada, and they ask me, who are you? Well, I'm a Jamaican, I'm an Ethiopian, I'm a this, I'm a that. And they've not centered themselves in the fact that they are Canadian. This is home. So yes, you're Canadian of Ethiopian background, or you're Canadian of Dominican background, whatever. But if you're going to dream in any country, you need to be able to be clearly sure of who I am. Because a young Dominican is not going to dream to aspire to be the Prime Minister of Canada. But a young African Canadian should be able to aspire to be the Prime Minister of Canada. So the mindset of the 1.5 million African Canadians, right, is something that we have to work on. So the issue of solidarity, of how we get young people to put themselves, identify themselves in a mental state that allows them to optimize the success is paramount. They need to know their history. They need to know the history of Canada. They need to understand where the history of African people in Canada, that it started way before 1625. So that they know they're part of a continuum, that there's been success in Canada, and that every new group of immigrant people of African descent are not seeing themselves starting from the beginning of their roadmap. The roadmap have to get very short, very succinct, and that we can then just empower young people. And that means our organizations have to be strong. And it means our organizations have to be much more, be aware of how they cooperate. You can't have over 200 organizations in the African Canadian community and expect efficiency in terms of how they work together. Now we have people who are working hard in order to at least have these leading organizations that can partner well with organizations, bring people together. And that has to be done on a regular basis. It's a lot of work. We have a history in Canada of numerous national organizations. We go Harambee, there's the Congress of Black Union. There's a lot of organizations that ought to have failed in terms of bringing people across a massive country together, in terms of having a clear mindset. But at presently, we have people who are working very hard at that. And we have Ethiopian folks who have been working very hard at that. And one brother here is living, who has been able to transcend and working on just a community basis, but into working on a level of looking at all the issues that affect African Canadians, regardless of where they come from, and providing that type of leadership. Right? And so I think that we have to be very proud of the people in our communities who are doing that work. And we have to make sure that we give them the support. Because it's lonely, it's very lonely at the top. And, looking at, thinking of Heather's work, the presentation by Heather. Interestingly, in the area of DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion, over the last 3 months, there's at least 3 or 4 African American women, senior vice president, who have had major issues in terms of the mental health, and some have committed suicide. Why did that happen? Because it's a very tough, we are facing a very tough battle in terms of diversity and inclusion. And it means that we need to be able to support Heather, right? That she doesn't feel alone. The sense of community, inviting them here, is a great step in this direction, knowing that at all aspects of the community, be it from the Caribbean background or continental African background, we are supportive of her. Because what she's doing means everything for us. It means for my grandchildren, your children. Right? The work that Liban is doing is important, that he needs your support. So every day that when he goes out and deals with the battles, that therefore he knows that his community is strong behind him. So when we talk about solidarity, we're not talking about something that's just nice words. It's putting that into action by letting people know that you care about them, that you have their back, and that you're willing to invest in them. I was at a meeting yesterday where there was a young brother who's a plumber, who started to get involved, very interested in ancient Africa and the history of ancient Africa. And he gave a very good presentation, starting about early man, etc. But he has a family. He's a plumber, he has a young family, he has 3 young kids. How is he going to continue this journey? He's on a new path. So it was interesting, there were some people saying to him, well, that he has a lot to learn. But he just started out. He's been doing this a year. And he's put a whole lot of work in. So the conversations had to switch from, not saying that he has a lot to learn, but how is he going to then create that dynamic? How is he going to be assisted? How is he going to be supported that he can move forward with the work? So in terms of our work, I think that there's a lot of work we have to do. There's a lot of building fences that we have to build with. We have to work and support different organizations. We have to push our leadership to be very transparent, to be very open to dialogue. And we each have a role to play in ensuring that how are we going to, what is going to be our X? Malcolm had to get his X. In the nation at the time, you had to find your X. Your X had to do with your purpose. What is your purpose? You each have to identify that in whatever level it is that you work on. So how are you going to contribute to this work where you're going to empower 1.5 million people to be able to take a stand and deal with the reality of their existence, and how do they create a sense of community, be it from the economics, from the social, the political, etc. So I end with asking you to look in the mirror and see what is it that you can do in the community, how you support your community, how you support the children, how we parent, how you teach them your heritage so that they get strong and have an idea of who they are. My kids grew up in the African Heritage Program. So even though they were born of the Caribbean, they had to know that they're African. So I had to ensure that I didn't have a name for my kids like Francis Jeffries. They had to have continental names. They had to be very clear of where they come from. Also, it's really interesting enough, my children happen to look very Ethiopian. So it's really interesting. So whenever, especially my daughter goes to Ethiopia, she goes 3 times. The immigration officer begins to speak to her in American. And then she cannot answer. And he says, you see that? You people, you go to America and all of a sudden you can't speak the language. I just said, no, seriously, I can't speak American. You know what I mean? But she also knows that she goes there because for reinforcement of the spirit. I made my children go to visit the continent, spend time in the continent, because I want them to understand who they are as an African person, so that they have the ability to work with anybody, especially within the African diaspora, because they are teachers, and they have to be able to have the skill sets to understand who they are, understand their role as educators of people of African descent, and to bring people together. So they had to go down and they had to accept. All my kids had to go to the continent and understand what it is with the continent, then the history. My children in Yoruba, they were Swahili. They have friends from every city. all parts of Africa, all parts of the Caribbean, because I want them, if they're going to be taking on a leadership position, they need to be quite clear where they are. I made sure I went to South Africa and lived for 3 years to understand the culture, understand the being in Western culture, whatever that is, and an African culture together, and the understanding that who I am as an African person. And I raised them on Kwanzaa values. And the Kwanzaa values basically are Pan-Africanist values. And I saw that in the world. I see my grandchildren. If you came and tell my grandchildren that they're colored or black, they will listen to you because they're not going to be disrespectful to you. But they don't see themselves that way. They see themselves as African. And even though they know that from the time that they're young, that they know that they have to understand that they have a role to play in the community, a role to play in leadership. And my granddaughter is 10. But when we speak to her, we speak from a position of strength. Because she has to know that there's a role to play in Canada, and there's a role for her in dealing with the humanity of African people in Canada. And so I want to thank you for just sharing my point of view with you, and I hope that you got something out of it. But thank you so much. It's a privilege.
Thank you so much for this enlightening speech. There's so many questions and assignment in this speech, and even in Dr. Heather's assignment. So again, between those phases, we understand there's so much knowledge in here. So we're going to be getting back to that. So if Dr. Teodros, if you can please come to the stage. I will invite Dr. Fassad to say a few things. He's the director of CMSS. He's been humble enough. He's been hiding all this time. I'm going to put him up, so please go ahead.
I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you so much for these wonderful speakers. You guys have been amazing, as Garina said. You guys are beautiful. Thank you. The spirit of Adwa, I just want to say thank you to these wonderful speakers and just give them a small token of appreciation. Huh?